And it looks like we are live. Guys, give me just a second here so I can add in the Mile High Huddle Superfan group over on the Facebook side of things. We want to get everybody in this wonderful Mile High Huddle community joined in. Mile High hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as per usual, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. And guys, it may be Dove Valley Deep Divers tonight, but as I see in the comment section overflowing here, we've got a whole bunch of people talking about the Colorado Avalanche, guys. Tonight, Game 5, the Avs have the opportunity to win the Stanley Cup in Denver. Super excited about that. We're going to run here as long as we possibly can, probably get out of here right about 7 o'clock so that I can go and check out the rest of the game and get into it. Erick, I know that hockey's not necessarily your bag, but which is crazy considering you're up there in Alaska where a lot of people play some hockey. But, dude, how are you doing today?
As good as I can be.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
I'm excited for the topic. I'm excited to be here for it, as always. I mean, getting to break down somebody who's not even part of MHH at Mile High Huddle, their 53-man roster projection, which, looking it over, has 54 people on it.
Yes, it does.
But it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun conversation, and thank you everybody for joining us in. And those of you who are Avs fans, well, I hope the Avs win. There is a soft spot for all Colorado sports teams. I just don't care enough. And I will say this: the other night when they were playing Wednesday night, right? That was their last game.
Yep.
I was busy doing something, but I was keeping track of the score, and I was happy to see they win. So.
Yeah, it was a great game. We got to see the return of Nazem Kadri. I know you don't know a whole lot about this, but the story of Nazem Kadri in this 2022 NHL playoffs, like seriously, they need to make that into a 30 for 30 one of these days, because it's just been onslaught after onslaught and turmoil and trepidation. Like, it's been an incredible run for him with the death threats that he got in St. Louis, the racial slurs and everything like that. Then he got injured, managed to come back through after it was like 18 days after having surgery on his thumb to repair that after a dirty play, and people continuing to just call him a lot of bad names and everything like that. And then he comes in overtime and scores the game-winning goal in his first game back to send the Avalanche back to Denver with a 3-1 series lead and the opportunity to win the Stanley Cup in front of their home fans. It's just been an absolutely amazing run for Nazem Kadri and these Colorado Avalanche. Want to say hello to everybody in the house. We got Michael Ronquillo in the house. Michaela, the Duchess, joining us once again. Michaela, it's so great to see you and to see that you're in Denver from the sound of it, according to one of the posts up in here, or at least in Colorado. We've got Dale Fleming, Jeff Noyes in the house. We've got EJ in the house as well. Let's see here. I think that's pretty much FC Bayern Munich. That's another name that's new for us, at least on Dove Valley Deep Diver. So we appreciate everybody joining in. Lawrence Rivera, he says, I'm watching the Avs. Let's take this. Let's go, Lawrence. And a pleasure to have you guys. A pleasure to have everybody in here on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Guys, today we have a great opportunity to break down a very well-respected media member down in the Denver area. Nick Kosmider from The Athletic released a 53-man roster projection. We're going to dive through all of that and kind of break down who he has making the roster. Obviously, like Erick said, there's 54 guys, not 53. So we'll have to kind of figure out which one we're going to get off there to begin with. But we're going to give our takes on everything regarding this article that was very well thought out, very well written, and I agree with a lot of what Nick actually had to say. But before we get into that, guys, quick matters of business. Again, guys, you're watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can find us on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel, and also, guys, at DVDD_pod. That's where you're going to find everything regarding Dove Valley Deep Divers, what we're talking about every single Friday night. Throw some takes out there every now and again as well, but at least you can keep in touch with what's going on with the show. And also, guys, very critical here, if you're on Twitter, at Mile High Huddle, that's the mother account where you guys find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos. There's film breakdowns like the Montreal Washington piece I released a couple of days ago. You're going to get opinion articles, film breakdowns, a whole bunch of content, anything regarding the Denver Broncos. You'll find it at Mile High Huddle on Twitter and at milehighhuddle.com on the internet. Now, Erick, Obviously, starting off quarterback position doesn't need a whole lot of conversation. You have Russell Wilson. You have Josh Johnson, the veteran they brought in to be the backup. Brett Rippon, obviously, probably not going to make this team. And is that his last chance to even be in Denver? I don't think he has any practice squad eligibility left. Am I right on that?
No, because of because of the changes they made on it, he still can, with the veteran aspect of it.
Okay, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Regardless, I mean, there's not a whole lot of conversation into that, but where the fireworks really start going, this was actually a conversation that you and I had last week on Dove Valley Deep Divers with the running back position. You have Melvin Gordon, you have Javonte Williams. Obviously, those are the top two guys in no specific order. You'll get Mike Boone, the third running back, who played really well last season in the limited time that he had coming off of a quad injury that he had in the joint practices against the Minnesota Vikings that kind of hampered his entire season. But then the interesting guy here, Andrew Beck, the fullback tight end hybrid kind of a player, special teams kind of a player. You and I kind of disagreed with this based on some information that I got from talking to Ryan Edwards over on the Broncos Country Tonight episode a couple of weeks ago. Does this surprise you to see that Nick has the same kind of opinion that Ryan does?
No, because I'm just going off the assumption that this was the 54th guy.
Okay, and that's fair.
But in all serious, I mean, doesn't really surprise me. Like, it just comes down to the fact of you're now keeping two players on the roster, the same thing. Because, spoiler alert, one of the tight ends he has is Eric Tomlinson. They're the same player, and Eric Tomlinson's better. There's multiple things on here, and you're going to hear this constantly, and you've heard it consistently throughout, is finances. You got to factor that in, not just for this year, but beyond this year when you have to extend Russell Wilson. It makes no sense to keep Andrew Beck because that adds a little bit more to the cap this year that he can then roll over next year and help, ease the cap hit or the raise of the cap hit from Russell Wilson. The only thing that was shocking to me was that he kind of referred to Andrew Beck as a good special teamer, and I don't get how anybody can sit there and come off with saying that. All you gotta do is turn on the Broncos coverage units last year, and you can see how bad Andrew Beck was. He's wasn't that good of a lead blocker as a fullback. He did all right as an inline tight end, but farther back he moved, the worse he got. It's just. I think part of it is familiarity and the fact that he won the one military award. The name of it is escaping me.
It was the USO deal, I believe, is what it was.
Yeah,
the Salute to Service Award.
Yeah, the Salute to Service. I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm sure he's a good person. Everything I've heard about him is that he's a good person. Just not that good of a football player. And the roster's been upgraded, and his position's been upgraded.
I don't necessarily disagree with you on a lot of that. Eric Tomlinson does a lot of the same things that Andrew Beck does, and it's going to be interesting to see if both of them make it, or one or the other, whichever one is the one that actually makes it. I'm not sure the layout of Eric Tomlinson's contract off of the top of my head and how easy it would be to move away from him.
Easier to get rid of Andrew Beck.
Is it easier to get? Okay, so and thank you for the clarification on that. But Beck was just listening to the report that I got from Ryan. It was just interesting to see that Beck made Nick Kosmider's 53-man roster to tie in with Ryan Edwards, who's been there and seeing some things behind the scenes that we don't necessarily have the privilege of being just based on our location. So that to me was just kind of noteworthy. I want to jump over here really fast. We got a couple of super chats burning the night away. We've got Michael Ronquillo doing his work, man. Luke Patterson shouted you out on Twitter the other day. I shouted you out as well. This is one of the best and most ardent supporters of Mile High Huddle, Michael Ronquillo. Everybody knows his name by now, dropping up off the top rope here, at least off the mid rope, because here comes Michaela off the top rope. But Michael says, let's go Avs and bring back the Stanley Cup back to the Mile High City tonight. I'm 100% behind you on that one. And then Michaela, the Duchess, coming in here, dropping big hammer right here. Will Russell Wilson make the 53? LOL, JK. Go Broncos and go Avs. Again, go Avs. Go Avs, go. I want to hear all the small things about halfway through the third period of the game tonight. That would be just a touch on a great postseason run, one of the legendary postseason runs for the Colorado Avalanche, arguably the second greatest postseason run in NHL history. Move away from that really fast. Russell Wilson making the 53-man roster? I would imagine so. I want to dive into another conversation because it was something that ESPN had put up the other day. It was one roster move that every team needed to make heading into training camp. It's just not like final move, maybe a free agent signing, a trade or something like that. And I believe it was Field Yates at ESPN is the one that had this article. And he had for the Denver Broncos, they need to extend Russell Wilson sooner rather than later. Eric, I want your opinion on this. I am on board with it to extend Russell Wilson sooner rather than later, but I think sooner rather than later doesn't need to be before we see any preseason action or even any game action. I think maybe around the trade deadline, somewhere around end of November, early December, that's where you really make the decision. Making that decision right now might not be the best idea. Eric, I want your take on this.
Well, you want to get it done sooner than later. You don't want to wait till after the season because then the price is probably going to go up, and not just because of play, but because of other quarterbacks that are going to get an extension. You know who's up for an extension after the season? Justin Herbert. You know what he's probably going to be pushing for? He's probably going to be pushing for above that 200, that 50, or that 5-year, $250 million mark. That's supposedly rumors of what Russell Wilson wants. I mean, you don't need to see him. You know what he is. You know what it's going to be. You know, he's still you didn't make this trade thinking that doesn't have more than, you didn't make this trade thinking he only has a year or two left. You made it thinking that he's got 5+ years. Get the deal done. 5 years, $250 million, $251 million, just to, one up a little bit. Just get it done. Like, get it done now. It can help out finances too. Like, one of those big things.
It can, because you can convert his base salary this season into a signing bonus, drop that cap hit, spread the cap hit over the next 5 years of the deal. You roll over a bunch more money into the next offseason where the real impact of his contract does hit. I can definitely get on board with that. You're also going to get, it's not only Justin Herbert. You got Joe Burrow, who was the first overall draft pick in that same exact class, who's going to be pushing that 5-year, 250, something like that. You've also got Kyler Murray, who's looking for a new extension. And it's rumored that he wants 5 or 6 years, like $300 million, or like 5 years, 268, something like that. And you also have Lamar Jackson, who's up for a contract this year as well. Like, there's 4 top tier quarterbacks in the league that are all looking to get paid, and a 5th one in Russell Wilson. Like, one of those contracts is going to hit, and the price is just going to continue to keep on going up. I don't necessarily think that anything's going to happen with Herbert or Burrow this season. Next year's probably the where you're going to look at that, because they still have the 5th-year option, a lot of cost control. Let me finish here. They've got the
just a quick interjection. You're saying that you don't think anything happens with the contract this year, like this season? Is that what you said?
With Herbert and Burrow. Specifically,
nothing can happen with their contract during this season. It has to be after this.
Right. Yes. It has to be after year 3. Going into year 4, they still have 2 years worth of cost control. I don't we're going to get a Russell Wilson extension way before that ever comes to fruition. Like, Joe, I believe so. I believe that. Like I said, I
hope so.
I believe so. I really do. I think this team's going to come out hot. Russell Wilson is going to play at that high level that we've saw. Even last season, at the end of the season, after he come back from that finger surgery, he was still playing really good football. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's the worst statistical season of his career." Yeah, he missed 6 games, guys. Like, let's be real here. He's still a top flight quarterback. He's still got a long ways to go. He's going to play at a high level this season. That's just my personal belief. And an extension is going to get done before the playoffs. I almost guarantee it. Herbert and then Burrow is going to go after that. I also think Kyler Murray is going to go after that as well.
See, if it happens sometime during the season, I'm fine with that. You don't want to wait until after the season. That's my biggest point. Right. Yep. If you're waiting until after the season, then the odds increase dramatically of Burrow and Herbert getting a deal done beforehand, because their deals are easy. Look at the highest one, tack on a few extra million, and there you go.
Yep.
Especially Joe Burrow. I mean, the dude, second year, he just took a team to the Super Bowl. Like, barring a dramatic decline in performance, they're not going to lose that big deal that they can get.
No,
it's still a thing of better to get it done sooner than later, because the more you wait, the worse financially it can be for the team aspect of it. And then going back to the comment you made a little bit earlier, I mentioned this last week too when we talked about it when it came to Andrew Beck and Eric Tomlinson. Andrew Beck cost $1.225 million against the salary cap this year. You can free up an additional $1 million while eating just over $1 million while eating only $200,000 dead money. Eric Tomlinson you're eating $1 million dead money, and he counts $14.35 against cap, 1.435.
Gotcha.
So it is it's basically their contracts are flipped.
Gotcha. And that That makes sense, and thank you for the clarification on that. Like I said, I didn't know that off the top of my head, and you had the opportunity to look that up, so thank you for that. Want to grab some of these comments really fast because we don't have Scott tonight. I saw Gary Lees Palmer jumping in here saying, "Hi, Eric and Lance and Scott?" Question mark. Good to see you guys. Let's go Broncos and let's ride. And yes, Scott has some family stuff going on tonight. He wasn't able to make it with us, so we're kind of watching the comment stream by ourselves right now. If I miss anybody on Facebook that has any stars, I do apologize for that. I'm going to try to grab as many of those comments as humanly possible. Jody Moncrief is one here, and Jody and Eric and I have had a long time back and forth feud about the offensive line, and this is another really good question here. Who starts at left guard? Is it Dalton Risner or is it Natani Moody? To him, it's Natani Moody.
Based on what? An OTA camp, like mini camp? Come on, man. Like, take OTA, especially with the offensive line, take it with a grain of salt. You got to see them with the pads on full speed. Right now, I mean, everything's still saying is Dalton Risner's the in-trench starter at the moment. That's not going to change until training camp or preseason, and it's going to take quite a bit to lose him. And the only way he loses it is either to Tom Compton or Billy Turner.
I don't disagree with you on that one. I think that the comments that were coming out of Nathaniel Hackett early in OTAs about this guy can really run, he was moving really well, they're throwing him out there on some first team reps and stuff like that. I think a lot of that was Graham Glasgow not necessarily being ready to play early on in OTAs and stuff like that. Risner is also kind of banged up right now. They're really trying to open up that competition to see who's going to be able to take it. I'm with you on this one, though, Eric. I do think that Tom Compton is the guy to watch out there at the left guard spot. Risner is probably going to be the backup, and Moody, I think that the hype that they're putting out there with him is actually going to turn him into a valuable trade asset. I think that that's really the one piece that you're going to look at as far as the offensive line is concerned right now, that is going to be the guy on the outside looking in and potentially not even in a Denver Broncos uniform come the end of training camp, whether it's by hook or by crook through trade or just flat out released. Moody's probably the guy on the outside looking in here.
Yeah, and we can definitely get into that a little bit more when we get to the offensive line.
Right.
This is kind of relative. Chase Wallner says, what's interesting that according to Mario Ventas, the Broncos tried to trade Risner to the draft. The better way to put it is that they were exploring options to move him. They just had no takers. Yep. And then Jody Moncrief says Risner was Denver's worst offensive lineman last year. Risner wasn't good last year, but he wasn't the worst. He was second worst. Lloyd Cushenberry, but that's just semantics.
Well, and Jody coming back and saying trade Dalton Risner. That very well could be in the cards. The one thing I
still don't think that would be for Moody, though. That's the ultimate point.
Right.
I don't think Moody is starting on this offensive line.
Right. No, I think it'd be Tom Compton. I want to go back to, what was it, 2019, I believe is what it was, the year that Drew Lock was drafted. Rich Scangarello was the offensive coordinator running a lot of wide zone. Dalton Risner fit that scheme really well, in my opinion. He played very, very well in this wide zone scheme. I don't think Dalton Risner's going anywhere. To me,
he was the best offensive lineman that year.
He was. Yes, he definitely was. Yeah, Garrett Bowles was still in his holding phase and stuff like that. We all know the story of him crying into his locker, like sobbing uncontrollably. I don't even remember who was the rest of the offensive line. I just know that it was those two. But I do remember Dalton Risner literally grabbing Phillip Lindsay against Green Bay and throwing him into the end zone for a touchdown. An illegal play. It should have been called back for illegal pulling of a running back. But regardless, Risner, I don't think is going anywhere, at least not this season. Let's get back to Nick Kosmider's article here, because there's a lot of very good information in this. And the next position, obviously the wide receiver position, you're obviously going to get the big four: Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler. The next two are interesting to me. Montreal Washington, the rookie 5th round pick out of Samford, is the 5th guy. And then he has Kendall Hinton. I mean, a Hall of Fame quarterback, Kendall Hinton, if you really want to address his title the correct way, but a very interesting player, the way that he's come from transitioning from quarterback at Wake Forest to the wide receiver position. Jitterbug kind of a type, just has a knack for getting himself open. I really like Kendall Hinton. To me, though, I want to see a little bit more bulk to this wide receiver core. Obviously, Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick are the big kind of guys. But everybody else is a little bit slight of frame. And then you've got Montreal Washington and Kendall Hinton, who are both really, really small. Who's going to be your wide receiver gunners on this special teams unit here, Eric?
Yeah, that's my issue with this as well at wide receiver. Nothing against Kendall Hinton. Dude's kid's in the Hall of Fame. I liked him coming out. I still like him, and I like him. I think that he'd be a good practice squad candidate, because you have one more year of KJ Hamler after the season. Yeah. And so you can sit there and work on developing him. Maybe you can, after the season, maybe you trade away a Judy or a Hamler or a Patrick or something. Maybe something happens there. You make a move. So I'm fine with keeping Kendall Hinton on the practice squad. I'm looking at this, and at that point, I mean, you're looking at special teams. Montreal Washington, he's the projected returner right now. I mean, he was Dwayne Stukes' guy in the draft, so that's going to be why a lot of people are putting him as a returner. It's one of those things of he has a good chance for it, but I want to see it first. And then you don't have a special teams guy after that. Seth Williams or Tyreek Cleveland make the most sense as a gunner here. Tyreek Cleveland's a good gunner, and he's proven that. And Seth Williams, I mean, we haven't seen it in the NFL really, but he's got the size, he's got enough speed, he's got the ability for it. And then Jalen Virgil, I like him. I like his physicality. And Brandon Johnson, both undrafted rookies. Brandon Johnson has been really getting a lot of praise through OTAs and mini camps at wide receiver, which is one of the few positions where you can kind of get some decent takeaways for it with their body control to go up and get the balls, being able to shake defenders, things like that. Like there's aspects you can get in the limited practice that they can have. So I think I'd go either Tyreek Cleveland or Seth Williams here. I think I actually have it as Tyreek Cleveland because of the special teams ability. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking for special teams ability outside of being a returner, Kendall Hinton doesn't make sense. And if you're looking at him as a returner, then why do you have Montreal Washington?
I guess the only other thing that you could say about Kendall Hinton is he has experience playing the emergency quarterback position. I can't say it with a straight face. The other one that I want to address here is Travis Fulgham, who we talked about it last week a little bit. A decent special teams player, depth receiver, had a pretty decent run in Philadelphia a couple of years ago. If you played fantasy football, you know who we're talking about. Has really been impressive from everything that I have heard coming out of training, out of OTAs and whatnot, playing the receiver position as well. So that might be another name to look out for. Kendall Hinton, I think, maybe on the outside looking in, and he still has practice squad eligibility. That's a valuable player, a valuable asset to have. To me, I would rather keep one of those bigger receivers in Seth Williams, Tyreek Cleveland, or even Travis Fulgham over Brandon Johnson, who obviously with his youth, Jalen Virgil and Kendall Hinton, probably those three going to be on the practice squad. Seth Williams might be on like the odd man out here. He could be on his way out because I don't think that he offered, like, at least Tyreek Cleveland offers you some return capabilities there as well. He's a decent kick returner. So like that would be the direction that I would go. It would be Montreal Washington as the primary option. Obviously, it's Dwayne Stukes' guy, as Eric said. And then Tyreek Cleveland as that backup guy, another big-bodied receiver that you can kind of use as a gunner on the special teams unit. That's at least the direction that I would go. Go ahead.
Real quick, I want to grab this. Jody Munt says, Melvin Gordon will play special teams, LOL. Doubt it. You know how many special team snaps Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon played last year combined?
3.
4.
4?
All by Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams played all 4 of the special teams. You don't play your top 2 running backs on special teams.
No,
you don't.
That's Mike Boone's position. That's Andrew Beck's position. That's Eric Sauber's position. That's Eric Tomlinson's position.
The only starters you play pretty consistently on special teams outside of the trench guys, offensive, defensive line, linebackers.
Yes. Cornerbacks too. You can see a cornerback or a wide receiver potentially. Not your top 2 guys, but
that's one
cornerback like K'Wan Williams.
Starters. Yeah, your starters like Quan Williams. I think you can see him. You can see him on there, but he's that number 3 guy. I'm talking about your top 2 guys. So
no, I'm with you on that. I just wanted to throw that third receiver, that third cornerback, because teams run a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of nickel cornerbacks and stuff like that. That's where I was going with that.
On that note, Denver's top 4 corners last year, they played a combined 5 total snaps between 4 of them.
Wow. Okay. Well, then let me eat my words. You see it a lot with teams like Seattle, who like to play a lot of their starters on special teams.
Yeah.
It's not that's where I come from.
Yeah, there's some teams that do, and it really depends on the player and everything. Denver was one where they kind of wanted to protect their corners. They were dealing with injuries pretty early on, and there's quite an injury concerned group there, so it makes sense for them to protect them a little bit.
Yeah. Peter Middleton joining the show from England this time. You got away from the Cambodia side of things. Peter, what's up, dude? Appreciate you for joining us again. A couple more of these questions, some concerns here. Jody jumping in here. Does Michael Ojemudia have a shot at cornerback 2 this year? Eric, this is a good question. We've gone back and forth on Michael Ojemudia, and even after the show last week, we went back and forth. Well, you and Scott came at me. Let's just put it real. You and Scott came at me about my takes on Michael Ojemudia, but Michael Ojemudia shot at cornerback 2 this year.
No, I think he's solidly corner 4. I don't think it too. I don't think he's going to usurp Ronald Darby, who was signed by George Payton. And as much as coaches in front office people say, "Oh, draft position and contracts don't matter," it does. It matters.
Yes.
So the fact that he paid Ronald Darby, like, yeah, he's going to be it. And then if Ronald Darby gets hurt, Michael Ojimudi is going to come in. Quan Williams is going to be your slot corner. Like, that's how it's going to be. Like,
yeah, we'll get.
I think there's a slim chance that he loses the 4th spot to Damari Mathis and becomes cornerback 5. But from what I've heard, that seems like it's a long shot.
And that doesn't surprise me, just seeing how hard it is to translate to the NFL level from the cornerback position. Like, corners take typically at least a year, maybe 2, to really translate into the NFL. And that's where Michael Ojimudi is at, going into year 3, I believe it is, for him. So to get that opportunity to come in and be a core special teams player, that's what he's going to do. He played really well against Kansas City last year in week 18. Had 11 tackles, 3 passes broken up. I have issues with him catching the football. They dropped a couple of interceptions in his rookie season. Like, there's deep-seated issues with me with Michael Ojimudi, but yes, and some tackling issues there for sure. But there's enough athletic talent there that he can at least play on the boundary. I'm not sure. This was something that Eric and I went back and forth on with Scott. I don't know that he has the requisite hip fluidity and burst to play on the inside. Like, that's such a big position. You have to have that hip fluidity to be able to turn and run in the slot cornerback that he just doesn't have. I think that he's a better off the ball boundary corner than he will ever be in the slot, and that's his role would be to back up Pat Surtain and Ronald Darby on the boundary. Is that a better way of me clarifying that comment to you last week, by the way?
Oh, Scott was the one that was sounding more about that, not me. I somewhat agree with you on that. And my biggest thing with that is I still think he offers up more in that aspect than Asang Bassi does.
Yes.
And you are putting Asang Bassi over Ojimudi on the roster. That was my biggest thing. But I want to grab this comment real quick, talking about inside linebacker, because there's a lot of concern about it. Jeff Noya says if they can't stop the run again, inside linebacker will be a concern. Outside of the Browns game, the biggest issue with the Broncos' issues against the run wasn't the linebacker position. It was the nose tackle. It was Mike Purcell. And we'll get to Mike Purcell here in a little bit because Nick Kosmider hasn't making the roster, and that's one I strongly disagree with. Yep. Basically because of some things that I've heard with that. Inside linebacker, I mean, Jonas Griffith and Baron Browning, once they took the position, they were doing great. Josie Jewell was having the best year of his career before he got hurt. Hopefully he's able to bounce back. I don't think that somebody said he's probably going to be a coach in a couple years. Jay Kozad said that. I think he'll be a coach after his career is over, but I don't think that'll be a couple years unless injuries take their toll on him. Yep. Inside linebacker is fine. It's not a position that matters a whole lot, especially in the projected defense that Evero is bringing.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Jumping in here because Michaela just dropped a big comment here. She says, all I want for my birthday is an Avs win. Michaela, it's your birthday today? If it's your birthday today, I want to wish you the most heartfelt happy birthday to you. You were awesome at the Mile High Huddle meet and greet. If it's tomorrow, regardless, happy birthday to the Duchess of the Mile High Huddle community, Michaela Parker. Congratulations and thank you so much. Oh, God. That actually kind of made me really excited. I just refreshed my comment stream, trying to wade through some of this stuff and grab some questions. We'll come back to you guys here in just a couple of minutes here, but I want to move the conversation forward just a little bit. We've got the tight end position. Nick Kosmider has him keeping 4. Obviously, you have Alberto Cuebanam. You've got Greg Dulcich. You have Eric Tomlinson. And then Eric Saubert is another one that was very interesting to me. And I don't know if it's Tomlinson or Beck or if it's Saubert or Beck is the last guy. Like, that's that 54th guy. You just don't exactly know who it's going to be. I was impressed with Saubert last year, though. He only had a handful of catches, like 3 or 4, something like that. But when he got the football in his hands, especially in the preseason where he really got a good run, I was impressed with his ability after the catch to just kind of break some tackles, get slippery. He's got some good burst. He's a decent blocker. He plays a really good special teams game. Like, that's the guy I do believe makes the roster over Andrew Beck. It's not, I think Eric Tomlinson is the guy that really does make it. Saubert was the one that I was mostly curious about.
The biggest thing is when you're talking about rosters, you got to look at what the comparable players can do. If you guys watched the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, the comparables, Eric Tomlinson is more comparable to Andrew Beck than Eric Saubert is. Eric Saubert is very much an inline tight end.
Yes.
Not a super great receiver, a solid one, solid blocker. not one that you really want to pull back and put into the and as your fullback. Eric Tomlinson is, because that's what he's done. He's a key special teamer. Eric Saubert is a solid special teams player. So it's very much for me is Eric Tomlinson or Andrew Beck, not Eric Saubert or Andrew Beck. And honestly, Eric Tomlinson and Eric Saubert both need to make it so that the Erics can represent.
That's true, because they both have their name spelled with a CK. Am I wrong on that?
No, they're honorable Erics because they don't have the K, but it makes up for it because we have a Gordon on the team. So
there you go. That's fair. All right, offensive line. You got the obvious guys. Garrett Bowles, obviously, that's your slated in all pro, by the way, left tackle. Dalton Risner.
Terrible year last year, though.
He did have a bad year last year. I got to kind of eat my words a little bit. He did kind of take a step back last year, but I digress. My take was right. Dalton Risner so I'm going to read this in order of what Nick Kosmider has it. He has Garrett Bowles, Dalton Risner, Lloyd Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, Graham Glasgow, Billy Turner, Calvin Anderson, Luke Wattenberg, and Tom Compton, making it 9 on the offensive line, with the guys out being Netani Moody, Ben Braden, Zach Johnson, Michael Neese, Quinn Bailey, Sebastian Gutierrez, and Casey Tucker. To me, I think Ben Braden has made a pretty decent case. He's been out there with the ones early in OTAs. Again, it's OTAs. You can't really take a lot from that, but to get him out there early, he's got guard and tackle versatility. If you got Lloyd Cushenberry and Graham Glasgow making the roster, there's some guard tackle or guard center versatility there. Quinn Miners as well. Luke Wattenberg, with just the issues that he has with his play strength and stuff like that. There's some things that he has to work through as a rookie 6th round pick. I think that Braden, with his NFL experience, with the fact that he's been in this offense with Nathaniel Hackett, they made him one of the very first free agent signings that they did in this free agency period. I think Braden has an opportunity to make the roster over Luke Wattenberg. Eric, what do you think about that?
I like the fact that there's only 9. I think they can get away with that because they have plenty of versatility.
Yes.
Garrett Bowles, I mean, he's your fixture at left tackle. He's going to be probably for the next 2 years. So there is a way they could, if he struggles again, that they could potentially look to move on there. I think that would be a little bit dangerous, but I digress.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
I digress. I'm just saying, if he has another 5-sack year, they could look. Dalton Risner, I mean, then you look at your other options: Billy Turner, Tom Compton, Dalton Risner, Graham Glasgow, Quinn Miners. Those are all guys that can play the guard position. 2 spots. Graham Glasgow, Luke Wattenberg, Lloyd Cushenberry can also be your center. Quinn Miners has a little bit of cross training there. So they have the versatility to move guys around. Calvin Anderson, he's your swing tackle. So you can get away with only 9. I just personally think that barring a trade, unless Moody is traded, I think he makes this roster over Wattenberg. That's a good point there too. With Moody, he can play either guard spot, and there's some physicality there. I don't want to. Let me put this in here. I know I was just talking about how Nathaniel Hackett talking about him moving and running around and stuff like that. Like that's possibly coach speak, but I don't want to completely discount it either. With the power that he plays with, despite his limitations with his length and mostly his athletic ability, but the pass protection is the big thing here. I don't want to completely discount the fact that Nathaniel Hackett went out of his way to praise him. Is that coach speed, or is he actually out there? With us not being there, it's hard for me to tell. He was asked, wasn't he?
I don't remember if he was asked or not.
I'm pretty sure he was asked the question about Moody.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it's that whole thing of coach speak. I don't think he brought him up himself. I'm fairly certain somebody asked about it, which kind of takes away the whole thing that he mentioned him up. But my thing is what he can be. He can play both guard spots. What do you think? I believe that he still should be cross-trained at center. That is something I believe since the moment he was drafted.
That's a good point.
I don't think that it's happened yet. I don't think it will happen. But barring trade, I don't see him leaving. And honestly, it's not that bad to keep him around, especially if he is showing these good things, because after this year, Dalton Risner is a free agent. You can move on from Glasgow. You have other options you can do to where the guy that you've been working with for the year that's looked pretty decent is still on the roster.
Yeah. Well, and you're going to get one of those two guys, Ben Braden, like I said, and you're going to get Netanya Moody. One of those guys is going to make the roster. The other one is going to make the practice squad. You need to have another emergency guard and emergency swing kind of a player that can play, 2 or 3 positions on the offensive line. And those two guys are probably the players that you're looking at to fill out the bottom level of this roster. Let's see here. There's lots to talk about the Avs, and I really don't want to mention any of those, but it sounds like they're kind of starting off slow. Malcolm Brown jumping in here. Hello from Homer, Alaska. Hello, Malcolm. Thank you, as always, for joining us on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Trying to just make sure that I'm not missing anything here.
Jody says don't need it. I'm assuming this is about Moody cross-training for center because you have Cushenberry, Glasgow, Wattenberg all can play center. Wattenberg is completely unproven. Cushenberry has so far shown that he isn't a quality center. And Glasgow, old, coming off an injury, expensive, could get moved on. Plus, it's been a while since he's been a center. I think that's one thing that always goes unmentioned. It's been a while since he's been a center. And Moody, it's just a matter of that cross-training. The more hats you can wear, the better, especially on the offensive line. Cross-training him at center isn't just because Denver could potentially need it, but it boosts his value for other teams as well. I mean, it's good for the kid. Moody, cross-training Moody, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, if something happens and you don't need him, you don't need him. But if something happens, you do need him. Well, there you go. You have a guy that you've cross-trained already.
Yeah. Let's see here. I want to grab this hot take really fast. We'll jump to the defensive side of the football here. EJ jumping in saying Chubb, Judy, KJ, and Cush are all on the hot seat this year after bad seasons last year. Chubb, I agree with. Judy, I don't agree with. I think that Judy, with the injury he had last year and the lackluster quarterback play he's been dealt with, KJ, I'm there as well. Cushenberry is a big one. Chubb and Cushenberry are really the two guys that need to step up. Chubb being a top 5 pick, the injury concerns that he has had, we got to see him play a full healthy season before I'm really kind of committed to going with him long term. I mean, the franchise tag is definitely an option here. That's something that I would really like to see him play well this year. But Cushenberry is the big one. Like, that's the guy that you really have to take a look at this year as a potential option to move forward from. Graham Glasgow, they're obviously going to put him in the competition there. Quinn Miners as well. But Cush is the one guy. I mean, there was trade rumors with him going into the draft about Lloyd Cushenberry, even throughout the draft about Lloyd Cushenberry. So that's the one that I'll agree with you on, like 100%. Chubb probably about 75, and Judy and KJ, I'm completely out on this take.
My argument isn't so much that they all could be on the hot seat this year, or is that they're all on the hot seat this year. Chubb, I mean, injuries for it. I mean, he's definitely on the hot seat though, because the whole contract situation going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Cushenberry, 2 bad years, both of them being the bottom 5 center. Like, yeah, he's definitely on the hot seat. KJ Hamler got hurt, and before he got hurt, the offense was performing quite a bit better than after he got hurt. So he kind of shows the value of having him out there on the field a little bit. And then Judy, I mean, a lot of that was how he was used. I don't think he's on the hot seat either. I get where you're coming from. I just don't exactly agree with it.
No, I'm with you on that. Jody got another question in here. We're going to jump into that about Malik Reed being a trade option. We'll get that here in just a second. I want to jump into the defensive line though. According to Nick Kosmider down at The Athletic in Denver, he has 6 defensive linemen making this roster. DJ Jones, obviously the high priority free agent that George Payton brought in to man that 1-3 technique, maybe even a 5 technique as a defensive tackle. Draymond Jones, who I fully expect to be a breakout player for this Broncos defense this season. Mike Purcell, we'll get into that in a second. Eniomo Awazurike from Iowa State, the rookie 4th-round draft pick. Deshaun Williams, a player that, Eric, I know you really like. I know James Campbell at Mile High Huddle likes a lot as well, as well as I do. And then McTelvin Agim, third-year player that has failed to break out, but he's been in the doghouse for some unknown reason. I want your big takeaway on this one. Mike Purcell. We've had this conversation a couple times before. He was a great nose tackle as far as stuffing the run a couple of seasons ago. I thought he did a pretty decent job as far as getting after the passer and the limited opportunities that he had the next season. I believe it was 2020. But last year he was just bad, like really bad. Even after and Nick Cosmatter points it out here. He's like, I pointed out a quote. I've pointed out a number of times this offseason that releasing or trading Mike Purcell could free up almost $3.6 million in cap space. But ultimately, I think that the Broncos will determine there isn't enough depth on the defensive line to justify that move. Close quote. Eric, Mike Purcell, $3.5-ish million in cap space. Is that worth it to move on from a veteran player like that?
So 3.573 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's worth it. For a guy who's going to see even fewer snaps than he did last year, yeah, it's worth it. For a fact that he would be your third nose tackle, or you'd have 3 nose tackles with him on the roster. Yeah, it's worth it. It's not worth keeping Mike Purcell, and it's nothing against him. I like Mike Purcell. I used to join his Twitch streams and everything and chat with him. Super nice guy, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he catches on elsewhere. It's just not needed in Denver for a team that's not going to use a nose tackle more than 40% of the time. 40%. And you want to keep, you're trying to justify keeping a third nose tackle option for about 40% of the time when you're using an actual 0-1 technique, when you can free up just under 3.6 million by moving on.
That's the big thing that I want to jump in here on is, what is this defense actually going to look like in its base personnel? Is it a 0-1, 2 5s and a couple of edges, or are you looking at a 2I, a 3, and then 2 7s? Like, as far as like a 4-3 or a 3-4, like that boils it down there for you. Going off what we heard, it looks like more of a hybrid 4-3 front.
Going off of what the Rams did is where I'm coming up with the numbers, and Dale Fleming says we don't know that yet, Eric. We have a good indication by what they've done in practice, by what they have said, and by wherever it was coming from with who he learned under. Mm-hmm. He learned under Vic Fangio, who hardly used a nose tackle, or disciple of Vic Fangio and Brandon Staley. He learned under Wade Phillips, who hardly used a nose tackle. And when he did, it wasn't a standard nose tackle. One of his most famous nose tackles was a guy who was 300 pounds, not 330 plus.
I was going to say it was Justin Smith down in San Francisco, right? Or Akeem Hicks in Chicago, one of the two.
No, talking about Wade Phillips. It was when he was the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Sorry,
I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah, I was talking about Vic Fangio, so I was sorry about that.
And looking at the percentage of those guys that they used, we can make the assumption that, yeah, it's not going to be more than 40% of the time. You don't need to keep it for that, because you're mostly going to have a 2-eye technique, a 4-eye 5 technique, and 2-7 techniques. It's essentially going to look like a 4-2-5. It's going to essentially look like a 4-2-5 or a 5-1-5, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
That's going to be your look, but it's not going to be a true 0-1 technique. You don't need 3 of those guys. You don't need 3 two down linemen, basically.
Well, and the nice thing about the defensive line players that they have as a whole, I mean, you've got Draymond Jones, who probably is not going to play that 0-1 technique, but DJ Jones can. Ilmo Wazirike, he can play 0-1. He can play the 2-eye. Who's
Deshaun Williams? Deshaun Williams is the third one I was talking about. The farther he got away from the center of the offensive line, the worse he got.
Yeah.
So even if you're using a nose tackle 60-70% of the time, you don't need to keep 3 of them, and the one that's the odd man out is the oldest one that frees up the most money to move on from.
And he's the most limited. He's the most limited because he's not playing outside of the 3. I don't even know if he can play the 3. But
he's not playing outside of the 0-1.
Right, exactly. I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt to at least play the 2-eye, but to play across the face of the guard and to get to that 3 technique, that's not going to happen for him. But then you also have another guy that's coming up, a young player, and EJ brings him up here. He says that Mike Purcell and McTelvin Agim need to step up this year. Both were bad last year. I disagree with that. McTelvin Agim, in the limited action that he did have, was actually one of the most productive defensive linemen that the Broncos had. That game yes, very, very much so. And thank you for the clarification.
That caveat is very important.
Yes. That game he had against the Chargers in Denver, and I think he played against the Ravens as well. He was very, very good as a pass rusher. I believe he sacked Lamar Jackson. Actually, that's exactly what it was. He sacked Lamar Jackson in Denver. Like that's a great quality to have. He can get after the passer, and he can line anywhere from the 0 to the 7 technique. He can go all across the defensive line on both sides. You've got a lot of versatility with the players you have here. Mike Purcell is the oldest guy, the most limited as far as the scheme usage and versatility, and he saves you the most money. He's the guy that's got to be on his way out. And then you also have a couple of young players here. Jonathan Harris, who has been just hanging around this roster for a while. You got Matt Henningsen, who was a 7th-round pick of George Payton this year. Marquise Spencer, who was a 7th-round pick last year. There's a couple of younger players that you can get in to get that 6th defensive line, interior defensive line player that Mike Purcell he's got to be the odd man out. I just don't see it for him this year. And that sucks because I really like Mike Purcell. He's a Wyoming guy. That's my dude. But it's just this is where the end of the rubber meeting the road. Like it's done. Sorry.
On this point, Dale Fleming says, but with Purcell healthy, I'll come back to that point. He could ball out in training camp, get starter's position to center the defensive line. First of all, Mike Purcell's not fully healthy. That's why they haven't cut him yet.
Is it
that has actually been reported? Is that he hasn't been healthy, which is why they didn't cut him before June 1st, is because he wasn't healthy enough, because then there was other issues that they had with cutting him. And second of all, they've made it quite clear DJ Jones is your starting nose tackle.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't sign him to just turn around and give the job to Mike Purcell.
Right.
Like he doesn't fit with this Ashawn Robinson role that you want as your other 4-5 technique opposite Draymond Jones. So Jones is your guy in the middle.
Yep.
Mike Purcell isn't starting on this defensive line unless they really want to handicap themselves with their ability as a pass rush on their defensive line, with Draymond Jones and Mike Purcell being out there on the roster or being out there on the field together a year after that they couldn't get after the quarterback.
Yep. And especially with Purcell and his struggles against the run last season too. Like they've got to get younger and they've got to get more athletic and they've got to get stronger on the defensive line, not only in interior pressure against the pass, but also just stopping the run. And Purcell, with the limited amount of touches or the limited amount of snaps that he had last year, and he didn't play very well. Like it's just done. And I'm sorry for that. That's just how it's going to be. Out to the outside linebacker. There's a couple of interesting takeaways here from the list that Nick Kosmider has. Obviously, you got Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory. Those are your top 2 options. Nick Bonito, 2nd-round pick, a guy that I am starting to come around on, quite honestly. There's some issues with the running game, but still at the same time, this is a quality pass rusher, good athlete. I like him in coverage as well. He also has Malik Reed making the roster with Baron Browning and Aaron Patrick, a guy that you have talked up over the last couple of weeks here on DVDD. Those are the last 2 guys. So 5 outside linebackers making this roster. First things first, I want to go to the question that it was Jody Moncrief.
Well, you pull it up. I want to address this real quick. Dale Fleming.
Okay, go ahead.
Dale Fleming says, I heard Purcell was healthy. I figured you likely have more information, Eric. I need to add this caveat, is that he may be healthy now, but a couple weeks ago, back when OTAs and minicamps first started, there were still issues with him, and that is why they hadn't cut him yet or traded him, because of injury clauses in his contract.
Yeah,
that could have changed in just over a couple weeks, because it sounded like he was close from conversations I had. But it still doesn't seem like he's going to be pushing for a starting job. If he's kept, it's for a backup job, which that's where you get to the whole financial aspect of it. As for Jody's question about Malik Reed and trading him, I go back and forth on this, because I think that he's a perfect candidate to get traded because of he's got experience. He's not super expensive. Granted, he is a free agent after this year. The cost for him is not going to be that high because he's a well-known poor run defender. And while he has production as a pass protector, the advanced metrics with it aren't very favorable. So you may not have to give up a lot to get him. But at the same time, this was a guy who Denver was so hesitant to give a restricted free agent tender for.
Took a long time.
And while teams were interested, nobody went and signed him. Nobody gave him a contract after they did. What's the interest there? Like, if teams weren't willing to sign him for a deal where they didn't have to give up any pick for just over $2 million, why would they now be willing to trade for him outside of the fact of, an injury happens? Like, that caveat matters. Like, certain variables are in play here.
Yes, that was the big thing I wanted to touch on. It's training camp. Someone goes down. You need a depth pass rusher. The Broncos have an embarrassment of riches there with Aaron Patrick, a guy that I know that you really like playing special teams. And then the guy that he had that Nick Kosmider had off the roster, and Jonathan Cooper, who played fairly well last season as a rookie. I was pretty impressed with him. There's still some issues he has to work with. Play strength at the NFL level was definitely one of them. There's also, he had some hard issues prior to being drafted, which is why he fell down to the tail end of the 7th round for the Broncos to nab him. But that's an interesting thing. You've got Reed, who they did extend that offer to, and Cooper, who's a guy that got a lot of experience last year. Aaron Patrick, like the bottom level of this edge group. One of those guys could potentially be that trade piece. And Reed, with the experience that he has over 3 years, almost 4 years in the NFL now, that's a very good possibility that Reed could be the odd man out, and Jonathan Cooper is the guy that they bring back just based on that alone. It's also a cost issue here too, because you trade away Malik Reed. I don't think that any of that money is guaranteed. It's a
you free up $2.4
exactly. Like there's $2.4 million. You can free that up as well. So to get a guy like a Jonathan Cooper, keep him around, let him learn a little bit. You still have enough depth there at the edge position. That to me is definitely an option I'd be interested in looking at. And Jody, this is a really good point and a really good question, man. Baron Browning, though, I want to talk about him really fast before we move on. Maybe answer another couple of questions here in just a minute, but we're going to be running out of time here directly, guys. Also, I want to go watch the Avs. But Baron Browning, Nick Kosmider has him listed as the off-ball linebacker, that edge position. We know from based on reporting and stuff like that, some things that we've heard from inside the building and everything, that they want to use him as both an off-ball linebacker playing in coverage and stuff like that, utilizing that athleticism, but they want to kind of primarily focus him on the edge. Is that a good idea to you, or do they need to kind of focus on bolstering the depth of the off-ball linebacker position that only, according to Nick Kosmider, has 4 guys going to play there?
Yeah, and I think he's giving one extra to the off-ball to the linebacker position than he should. Baron Browning, I'd play to his versatility. I'd count him as an outside linebacker, but he can also play inside linebacker depending on the situation. So I think between the two, you only need 8 between the two positions. You only need 8 edges and linebackers combined. I see nothing wrong with cross-training Baron Browning because it's what he did in college. I mean, we've seen his athleticism work in coverage. We've seen his instincts improve. Let's improve his technique. Let's make him this versatile piece that he can be, that he was in college. I don't see an issue with it. I do wish they kind of focused a little bit longer on developing him as a linebacker before making the change. But, cross-training, I'm never going to have a major issue with cross-training. Getting to inside linebacker, Josie Jewell, Jonas Griffith, Alex Singleton, those are the only off-ball linebackers you need because you have Baron Browning. You don't need Jocelyn Cernat, who has proven to be bad. Not just on defense, on special teams as well. He has proven to be bad. He had a couple nice moments before the Browns game, but the Browns game completely ruined it for him. The Browns target him and Micah Kaiser, right? That was the other linebacker. They targeted them for a reason, and they just completely, ran through Denver's defense. The linebackers couldn't stop anything. Mike Purcell played a terrible game. Speaking of, it was bad. I don't see a way for it. And if you're going to keep a 4th guy on there, it sounds like Wright or Mauga, the USC kid. Sounds like one of those guys will make it over Cernat, just because they seem to be. The coaching staff, based on comments they made, seem to be more impressed with them on special teams coming out of college. And that's something that Justin Cernat hasn't done well. Not even in college, he wasn't really a good special teams player. And they both are very physical against the run. And in the case of Wright, I like his ability in pass coverage as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Cernat was a guy that I really liked. Coming out of Wake Forest, the athleticism, the ability in coverage that he showed back as a Demon Deacon was at least enough to me that he should have got maybe a little bit better look. I can't remember if it was a triceps or a pectoral muscle in his rookie training camp, where he was actually showing out and was getting some runs with the ones and stuff like that, really playing well on special teams. Then he had the injury and he just never really got back to form, and quite honestly may not just be a good football player. That's all there is to it on that one. EJ jumping in here and says, do you think our inside linebacker depth is thin this year, and do we need more depth for the season? I don't think so. And the reason why I want to say this is because I don't think you're going to see a lot of 2 linebacker looks to begin with. It could be a 4-2-5 base where you have 2 linebackers on the field, Jonas Griffith and Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, like whatever the combination may be. But you're going to take one of those guys off the field to begin with, and it's probably going to be Josie Jewell because Jonas Griffith was very good in coverage last year. you're going to bring in that extra defensive back. I think Kareem Jackson is going to slide down into the slot, play that heavy slot kind of strong hitter safety role in the box and whatnot. Josie Jewell is going to be taken off the field. Alex Singleton is going to be taken off the field. You're going to play with 6 defensive backs, and that's the way that this team is going to play. So to me, the depth isn't necessarily a big thing for the starting unit. For special teams, maybe I could see the concern there, but you're also going to get Baron Browning that's going to play at multiple different positions. I don't think that depth is a need for this Broncos team at the linebacker position. Eric, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you're playing a 4-2-5, right?
Yep,
11. That's good ability to get Baron Browning out there on the field, because you have that ability as a pass rusher. You can keep the defense guessing, and then you pair him with Jonas Griffith or Josie Jewell. Like, you're fine there. I doubt we use more than 2 linebackers more than 50% of the time, just because of the fact that the game has gone away from linebackers. I mean, you still need one. They're still a key part for the defense. You just don't need as many of them. The Rams last year, I mean, they used a lot of different linebackers, but they didn't use multiple a lot of the time. And when they did, it was just 2. So I don't think that the depth really needs to be improved, because, as I was talking about, is you have Jewell, you have Griffith, you have Singleton, and then you have Baron Browning as well with that cross training.
Yep. No, I'm with you on there all of the way, 100%. Let's see here. Nothing really rolling in the. We got a question from Peter here really fast. Is Alex Singleton a surprising pickup? I don't think so. That's one of those depth pieces that you have at the linebacker position. He's a quality special teams player. He led the Philadelphia Eagles in tackles for 2 years in a row. Like, that's one of those players that you need to have to just bolster the bottom end of the roster and, quite honestly, get after special teams, which is something that George Paton has been trying to do ever since he was hired as a Denver Bronco. I mean, go back to his first press conference as a GM, his opening press conference. He's literally stressed so many times, the special teams unit needs to be better. It needs to be better. Special teams is a core part of playing football, and Singleton's one of those guys that steps in and plays special teams on a very, very good level, and he can play on the defensive side of the football as well. So I don't think it's necessarily a surprising pickup, maybe in a different direction than a lot of fans wanted to go in, but I understand the direction you're going with, because linebacker is just a devalued position in today's NFL, and Eric just got done doing a really good job of breaking that down. So why go out there and spend $8 million for Bobby Wagner when you can get the same production, if not even a little bit better, because of a younger and more fresh athlete in Singleton, than getting a big name at the linebacker position that's not going to see the field all the time?
I'll say Singleton was a surprising pickup simply because it wasn't a name I was looking at.
Right. And that's
once he was signed, it made sense. I mean, he's a good special teams player. He was for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a good tackler. There you go. I mean, it makes sense why they picked him up, and it's not for very much. It was like just over 1 million, 1.5 million, something like that.
I think it was like 1.5. 1.5, I think, is what his deal was.
Not a big deal or anything, but we got to move on. We got 2 more positions to get through in a short time. For the cornerback position, with the Nick Kosmider has Pat Surtain II, Ronald Darby, Quad Williams, Michael Ujimudi, Asong Basi, and Damari Mathis. The only one I have issue with is Asong Basi. I've made my opinions on him quite clear over the weeks. He's not good. He should be on a roster of a team that is really weak at corner. Denver's not one. I think going on to Faion Hicks, Jaquan McMillan, Bless Austin as that extra guy makes more sense, because Asong Basi is also not good on special teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Bless Austin, quite honestly. A veteran with some positional versatility, and he's been playing really well in OTAs from the sound of it. Like, that to me is the guy. Faion Hicks is obviously tail end of the draft picks. Or no, he was undrafted free agent, right? Wait, no, he was a 7th round draft pick. That's right. That's a practice squad candidate right there. Jaquan McMillan, Johnny Lewis Jr., the other guys that are on the roster right now, they may see some practice squad versatility there, but Bless Austin is the one guy. Asong Basi, he's bounced around. Like I liked his game. I liked his physicality. I liked him stepping up into the run game and stuff like that, but he was never really that great in coverage. And I will digress on that point. I think that having another player that can step into the slot is something that this Broncos team really needs. I mean, Surtain with the change of direction ability is something that I didn't like. They were playing in the slot at Alabama. I didn't like it last year. Darby's not a slot guy. K'Wan Williams is the slot starter for sure. Ojimudi is not a slot guy. Damari Mathis is not a slot guy. You need someone that can step in there, and I think Bless Austin is the guy that's going to do that.
I disagree with a lot of what you just said.
Okay, why is that?
I think Damari Mathis is perfectly fine playing in the slot.
Okay.
I think Ronald Darby can play in the slot. I think Patrick Surtain can play in the slot.
Yeah.
I have issues. You know me. I have issues with his hip fluidity, his ability to change direction.
Mm-hmm.
But the mistake I made with him was I undersold his footwork technique, and that can make up for so many issues to flip your hips and turn.
The physicality
and
too. If he can get his hands on you with those long arms and that powerful punch, if he can get his hands on you in the slot, I can get behind that. You're right. You're right.
And I have seen some other, big physical guys who I had concerns about improve their footwork. Nowhere near on Patrick Surtain's level. Patrick Surtain's footwork is absolutely insane for being a rookie last year, and it was great. It's the biggest reason why my opinion on him was a miss. With seeing others who aren't at that level of footwork step into the slot and perform well, yeah, I have no doubts that he can do it.
That's a fair point, and something I never thought of. It's a great counterpoint, by the way. I want to throw that out there for some people who may be listening on the back end of this that really came at me kind of weird on Twitter. But anyways, it's a great counterpoint, not the correction that everyone seems to think that it is. But regardless, anyways, safety position. This is another one that was interesting to me. He only kept 4. And I think that this is an opportunity for the team to keep 5 safeties here because of the versatility with Kareem Jackson. You can keep 5 cornerbacks and 5 safeties and keep PJ Locke on the roster. He's at least an athlete that can play well on the special teams unit. He may not be the best special teams player, but at least he has the ability to do that. With PJ these Locke? Smaller PJ Locke.
PJ Locke's fine as special teams player.
Yeah, he's not the best special teams player, but he's fine. He's good enough. But I think that you can get PJ Locke on this roster and kick Asang Bassi off easily. Like, there's definitely a good argument for that. Keeping 5 safeties and 5 cornerbacks, because you do have a guy like Kareem Jackson, who he may not be the starting nickel safety, or nickel cornerback, but you can play him there, especially if you're going to play him in zone. Like, there's an opportunity here to keep 5 and 5. You're still going to have 10 defensive backs and get a better player that can help you more on special teams, because Asang Bassi is not that guy. He is not a special teams player. And again, we talked about how the lack of his ability in coverage just a little bit ago. There's some versatility with Jackson that I like more, and you can get some versatility with PJ Locke to bolster the special teams unit where you're not getting that with Bassi. That's the biggest point that I have there.
Yeah, my thing is take off Andrew Beck. Looking over this, trying to figure out that spot, because remember, this is at 54 people, so we got to get down 2 if we're going to keep that extra safety. Justin Chenard, Andrew Beck, Asang Bassi. Those 3 can go. It opens up other spots. Mike Purcell, I would switch Mike Purcell out for Matt Henningsen. Like, you have your options. And talking about this with the slot is PJ Locke actually played well on defense, and he was a fine special teams player. You get more having PJ Locke with the other 4 safeties that Nick Kosmider has on the roster than you do Asang Bassi.
Yeah.
Because Kareem Jackson, as you said, he can drop down and play the slot. Caden Stearns, he can drop down and play the slot as well. Delarian Turner-Yell, he can drop down and play the slot as well. Mm-hmm. So you have other options. You don't need a pure backup, bad nickel corner, bad slot corner. You don't need it. Going 5 and 5 with the versatility that you have, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and that should be the way that we go. Yes. Before we get on to special teams, I want to say, Dale, we appreciate you, man, and we appreciate the back and forth as well. And glad you understand that I wasn't really angry with what you were saying. It was just a conversation and a debate that we were having. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. And I'm glad that you did find us a couple months ago and that we have been a blessing for you, because it's great seeing you in here. You always bring some good points and some good questions.
Yeah. And I want to just carry off this, piggyback a little bit here. Don't ever think that when we come back and forth with you guys, that we're trying to correct you or make you feel bad or something like that. This is our show. It's our opinion. You guys are a part of it as well. And we want to come to you and try to help educate you a little bit more and get your guys' opinions out here as well. That doing what we do sometimes come off in the wrong way. That's never what we want to try to do. That's not what we're accustomed to do here on Dove Valley Deep Divers. We want to give you deep dive opinions and stuff like that. And thank you, Dale, for coming back to us and saying, great show, Lance and Eric. Thank you for the great discussions, Broncos country, and especially the back and forth with Eric. So thank you, Dale. We really appreciate you, man.
And Jeff Noyes, since we're talking about 10 DBs with me carrying only 5 linebackers, I'm assuming you're counting edges as linebackers. Got to make that split there. I mean, edges and linebackers are totally different. Only 3 linebackers are needed. 3 pure linebackers: Jewell, Griffith, Singleton. That's all that's needed.
Yep.
And roster math can always be worked around everything. 10 defensive backs is the norm. It's the standard anymore in the NFL. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing 11 defensive backs become the standard. I know that last year, I think Fangio initially had 11 defensive backs on his roster. And in 2019 as well, his first year, I believe that there was 11 defensive backs.
Yep. I think you're right on that. I think because they kept 6 cornerbacks and 5 safeties. At least it wasn't the absolute garbage show that we got with Vance Joseph keeping 7 off-ball linebackers that first year.
That's a complete joke.
Oh,
okay. So in the modern NFL, you never need more than 4 linebackers, 4 off-ball linebackers, not counting edges, not guys who can play the edge. So not counting Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, not counting those types of guys. You don't ever need more than 4, ever. There is no reason for it. And if you're keeping 4, then you're just hurting somewhere else. And we saw that with Vance Joseph. Now, special teams, and I want to talk about special teams real quick because there is one disagreement I have here with Nick Kosmider. He has Brendan McManus, Sam Martin, and Jacob Bobenmoyer. The only one that has a piece of competition for that is Sam Martin at the punter position. And honestly, I'm curious what Corliss Waitman can bring to it. I like the fact that he's a left-footed punter. Bill Belichick absolutely loves left-footed punters because the spin of the ball is different. It can create an advantage for your punting unit, which, hey, Denver can use. And as long as he's not a huge drop-off from Sam Martin, I'm fine with it because, if it's just a slight drop-off, say, up to 20% drop off in what you're getting out of Sam Martin, I'm fine making this change because of the finances, because you have to pay Russell Wilson eventually. And Sam Martin is extremely, for lack of a better way to put it, overpaid as a punter. This is a guy who he's entering the final year of his deal, and he counts $2.7 million against the salary cap. You can free 2.25 of that up by letting him go.
No.
Last year of his deal, go to the young punter. If it doesn't work, hey, you got to find another punter. But you know what? Go with the young guy. Go with the left footer, as long as it's not a significant drop off.
Right. No, I'm with you on that one. I don't even know who this Corliss Waitman kid is. I've never seen him before, so I don't know. The fact he's a left-footed punter really intrigues me though, because like you said, Eric, did I lose you? I think I lost Eric here.
No.
Okay. Had some technical difficulties. Sorry for that at the end of the show. At least it's the end of the show. Want to give a quick shout out here to our guy, Albert Knoppers, who jumping in here at the tail end saying hello. Finally got some time to be on here again. He's got work. Well, Albert, come on, man. We need you. We need you here because, again, great supporter of the show. It's a pleasure to meet you and your wife, Michelle, at the Mile High Huddle meet and greet. And I cannot wait to see some more of the great cricket work that you do. Those mailboxes you made for Zach and Chad were absolutely spectacular, man. But with that, guys, I think we're going to get out of here. We're at 1 hour and 6 minutes. Thank you all for joining us on Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Sorry, Albert, to get out of here right as soon as you get in here. Go back and check us out. It was a great show. Got a lot of positive feedback from everybody. Guys, follow us on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH. For Eric, at Erick Trickel. Also, guys, at Mile High Huddle, there's some other account where you guys find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos, film breakdowns, opinion articles, anything Broncos related you're going to find it at Mile High Huddle and on milehighhuddle.com. Speaking of, if you guys are on the .coms, huddleuppod.com. Redesigned website, a lot of new stuff on there. Trying to get some Dove Valley Deep Diver stuff back on there if you guys are interested in stuff like that. But that's the merch tent, guys. There's hats, t-shirts, teddy bears for your babies. There's onesies, stuff like that. Anything for the guys, anything for the gals, something to suit your fancy. You're going to find it at huddleuppod.com, facebook.com /Mile High Huddle Pod. That's the podcast account on Facebook.com. Also, get on over to the Mile High Huddle super fan group and join in the discussion with everybody else on in the Mile High Huddle community. It's a great way to have some fun, have some great conversations with everybody that you don't see here on the podcast or even over on Twitter. Guys, if you guys are not financially able to do so, whether it's through super chats or going to huddleuppod.com, 3 things everybody should be doing. It's the ticker down on the bottom of your screen here, guys. And if you guys are listening after the fact on the podcast, subscribe. Wherever you guys are watching this, please, specifically on YouTube, it helps so much with us in terms of getting our following even bigger. Like every video you guys see, it helps with the algorithm as well. But the best thing you guys can do to help us grow and get in front of as many Broncos fans as possible is share. Because without your guys' support, we could not do anything what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, with that, guys, we've got the Avs on. It sounds like they're down 1-0. I'm guessing at the end of the first period. Eric, are you going to check that out?
Probably not.
Come on, boo this man. Everybody,
Uh,
I want the chat stream filled up with boo this man gifts. Like the whole thing. Boo Eric, boo Eric, boo Eric.
I don't have cable to watch the game. I'll keep track of the score on Twitter. That's it. But before we get out of here, there are 4 things I want to quickly address.
Okay.
Jeff Noya says, do we use a raw spot for a long snapper, or can an OL fill that offensive lineman fill that role?
No.
Yes, you need a long snapper, period. You have to roster one. EJ says Sam Martin should be gone after this year. Need way too many shank punts. Sucked last year. Needs to get better. He's a free agent after this year, so just let him go now. Where was the other one? EJ also, I disagree with Lance that a GM can play, but it's all good. Maybe this year he becomes Aaron Donald. Funny thing is limited pass rush snaps. He only played 61 pass rush snaps, but he was 5th in pass rush win rate last year. His issues are strictly run defense, but he can get after the quarterback. He got a pressure every 6 snaps that he played as a pass rusher. So that's a pretty good high rate there. Definitely needs to be more consistent, and we have no idea what he can do with a larger snap count, especially as a pass rusher. But run defense, hate him on for that all you want, because it's an issue. And then Dale Fleming says that my brother and I have done it for 30 years, and that he uses quotes because you're not biologically related. Blood doesn't matter. Like, families, being a family is a bond that goes beyond blood. I consider Lance family, and we're definitely not blood related. I'm handsome, he's ugly. So that should be the first game.
Easy there, killer. Easy there, killer. I will say though, I am ready for here in a couple of years. Eric, I don't know if I can announce this, but I'm going to anyways. Eric has asked me to be a groomsman in his wedding here in a couple of years, so that's his wedding redo. So I'm
wedding
very
2.0 wedding redo.
Yeah. Like Eric was supposed to be able to come down to my wedding. He had some family obligations he had to take care of. Like we are brothers. Like this is what we do. He's one of my best friends, and we've done this for now 3 years, going on 4 together. So it's been a long ride, and we disagree on a lot of things. You guys should see our conversations on the text message and the group chats back behind the scenes that you guys aren't privy to. Like it can get ugly between Eric and I, but every single time we come back and away from it better, and it happens here on DVDD as well. And to be able to have that family from that brother from another mother, it doesn't matter. It's always with love and respect. And Dale, again, we love and respect. We love and respect everybody that joins us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. With that, guys, you all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. Go Avs! Go Avs! Go! And as always, go Broncos. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week.